Up about the third row of wheels moves on one letter position. And therefore, eventually, you're going to get through 26 times 26 times 26 possibilities. It's going to take this machine about 13 minutes to do that. And at some point, we're hoping it's going to find a solution that matches our message.
It can, because you're adding more information, you're narrowing things further down, essentially.
Okay.
The machine itself, if you want to have a go and see how it works, come back later, have a go yourself on a little project that we've got for you.
Thank you.
The Germans actually changed the machine themselves, they've got an extra rotor or something?
Well, later on in the war, they used several different types of side machines.
Yeah.
That was certainly the commonest. Now later on, the sort of top brass, well, you'll see in the next gallery,
Oh, okay.
we'll explain that the Lorenz machine was a far more complicated machine for a slightly different purpose.
Okay.
Where do you go? Yeah, you're there. We'll tell them more about
The
the
difference
Lorenz.
is that here, if you don't have a crib,
Yeah.
the bomb is useless.
Yeah.
So it's essential you know what the Germans are saying, a word, some phrase, otherwise you ain't getting into it. The Lorenz, I don't care what messages, words are, it's a statistical analysis of things. It's differing in that you can attack it without any knowledge whatsoever of the content.
Right. Okay.
Here, it gets the content. Okay. So yeah, this is checking machines, and you can come back as John said, there's
Countless modularity. 36 lines PI0.
oh yeah,
Right.
rotors effectively, and you can type on it and it does a lot of jiggery pokery and makes life difficult for those who are trying to read messages. The Germans evolved that system from 1933 onwards and they claim it as their own, and they don't allow it to be sold commercially. If you want one, shoot a few Germans and steal it. Otherwise, make your own. There are known quantity enigmas. What the Germans do is they keep modifying it slightly, making differences, and they have their settings of the day sheet, which just really irritates everyone. This, on the other hand, is a different piece of kit in the sense that what we have here is a stream cipher. This is more akin to modern cipher machines because it uses Boolean logic in order to hide things. Now, to give you an example of what a cipher message looked like, there's the plain text. That is a German readable message. And that's what it looks like when Lorenz eats it. Generate an apparently unpredictable sequence of numbers. Think National Lottery machine. If you could set up the exact same atmospheric conditions and the exact same molecular movements of the balls, you'd get the same sequence every single time. This machine has what's called a starting position. And the combination of all the little switches around these 12 rotors and your starting position will alternate. Clark is good at finding their true intent. Additionally, Hitler and his generals are using this system to argue about where, for minor things, to do with anything over 250 characters, you send it on this network, because otherwise it requires multiple enigma messages, the constant failure of radios to get it through the zone. But their communication lines are complete farce. Everything about the Russians is a top-down approach to strategy, which is, I don't know whether I can go left or right, I have to talk to my general. So what do the Ukrainians do? Get rid of the generals. And then they just wallow for ages until a new general comes along. Is that this one is two-tone. It's not two-tone, it's one tone. It's either on or it's off. But it's the duration of the length of the beat that determines what you're doing. So if you have a short and a long, that makes up characters. If you have gaps, that's how you differentiate between long and short beats. This, on the other hand, is called frequency shift keying. Effectively, it goes high and low frequency. Trust me, you only hear the high frequency. What you can't hear is the low one. And it oscillates between the two. There's usually a frequency gap of about 1,000 Hertz. maybe one is high and the other one drops down really low. Listening, know where one character starts and another beginning. Well, it checks for this 1 bit and 1.5 bit long. And once it starts to lock into these, it's able to re-synchronize and get back to figuring out this. So the women who read this sequence of cogs and stuff in the machine, like Enigma, but we're using a binary cipher because it's binary, and we've got 5 bits in the binary, 5 into 5 rotors, and some other rotors. You can make that deduction just from the information you've got. So he said, okay, maybe we've got some lines. So they created large charts of 575, 580, whatever long, and he put X's and dots of the first impulse, which is, an impulse is that if I look at the character F, it's made of 10110. So take that 1, and take all the things that correspond to that, and stick them in a big sheet. Really long one. And the end result was he started to see these lines running through this way. So he went that repeating patterns in a width of 41, I mean that one of the rotors here is 41 positions around. The other ones, of course, these patterns here and here confirm this, because they're not generating bit patterns. What's happening here is these 2 rotors, when this and this are both one as an output, they turn. So once they have divided as a group of 5, so they all increment by 1 position. When they get to the end here, they'll wrap around and they'll do their rotary thing. These at the top, every time I press a character on that keyboard, these will move forward by 1 and do their little wrap-around thing there. And these 2, these are the key to why the Germans thought this system was unhackable to a degree, because this creates an unpredictable rotation pattern of these. So if you get one of these wrong, you don't break the message. There are 3 periods of rotation here. The top 6 will always creep forward every time I press a key, and as of course when they hit the end here, they just go straight back. This one is only going to move when this one has a light above the peg, or if you look at this pattern here, we've got the top 5, these 2 are the ones in the middle, and these are the ones at the bottom. And when both of these are lit, these go forward by 1 and that pattern changes, like this. So these are both lit, so that changes, they move forward. These aren't, so that stays the same, so that changes. These are the same, so that changes, and so on and so forth. Can be codified into a machine so that you can compare one thing against another and extract out stuff. See of the Robinson. It was not the best bit of kit in the long run. You've got to be careful you don't do something here and say it was rubbish, because it wasn't. It was an absolutely amazing bit of kit. But its problem is that it eats tapes. These paper tapes, like, here you go, here's an example. Grab a bit of paper tape. Go on, it's a message. Here you go. Grab a bit of
What you're looking at here is how codes used under German line were what's in the program. And how that worked led to develop the world's first programmable electronic computer. So we have a little
history. That is an original Colossus transform from 1945. Awesome! Came off one of the Colossus machines that was saved by Milton Keynes, which became GCHQ. But here we are. This is Colossus as its entirety. But the reason I'm around the back here is because the 2 paper tape solution was that 1 paper tape is an output from this the Lorenz machine, and of course it keeps snapping. And the reason it snaps is sprocket holes are needed to synchronise the tapes perfectly. So you have to take the clock holes off of the paper tape. Hence the reason the paper tape now drives this to the clock holes. Now the way these store information, unlike a modern computer where a memory cell on a computer that holds 1 bit is a battery, a capacitor, with transistors dotted around the top. And effectively they measure the voltage inside the battery. And if there's a voltage there, it represents a 1. If there's no voltage, it's a 0. Here we've got these loops that represent the 1s and 0s. So if there's no loop, there's a 0. And one of these is linked permanently to one of these. So how do you make these act like rotors? Well, if you assume that there's a group of these, like let's say that represents 1 rotor there. That one at the top could be position 1, physically the number 1. But as we move the rotors round, position 1 is now at step 2, and then it goes around. But it still maintains its position, which is its value, which is held in there. So that 1 position there, to make it so that we don't need any paper tape. but they didn't have the technology or the time to do that. They had a need for a machine that could solve it on the quick. So this box here has an equivalent threshold. So this machine keeps asking the question, have I hit the threshold? Because when I do, print stuff out. If I don't, keep doing this again and again and again. So that's the same as modern computing, and that's not on the Manchester Baby. There's no digital branching in it. These are the counters. This is what it's currently doing. You can read the contents, but it may be encrypted. So yeah, there you go. That's Colossus in a nutshell. And your job as a Wren, standing some little civilian staff work, like that, you stand there for 8 hours in a day. If somebody needs a toilet break, cigarette break, tea break, any break, they go, you don't move from the machine. The only way you're going to get away from the machine is if you're violently ill or you die. They come back. And the argument is who makes the job transistorize one? I found a good thing. Well, look, it's doing a calculation job, following instructions, and it has the ability to make a decision. It's a computer. We don't argue about quite a thing, whether it is a general purpose, or whether it's doing display, or whether it's semi-programmable or programmable. The board on the front is a key to. If you have a computer that only runs spreadsheets, you can design your spreadsheet as a whole country will, and you can program your spreadsheet, like you can program your washing machine. But this won't allow you to do anything other than that one function. Same thing. You have these together and apparently they're not doing complete. So there you go, that's the World War II aspect. Luckily, it was push doctors are getting a couple of sweeteners. One was to get rid of the missiles out of Turkey, and the other one was to say, look. Calculators are an interesting technology because they start 23,000 years ago more often, but at least you have something that's consistent. One of the reasons that John Napier came out with the concept of the logarithmic values and the Napier rules is because you get problems with sheep times more than the clerics because you can get through numbers quicker. Use all 10 fingers to enter a number and then you just pull a lever and then you just do this. And so calculator users doing that were always earning more, and it was about £89 in 1965 for a comptometer course. That's a lot of money. This is EDSAC. And for me, EDSAC is a bit of a watershed because what it says is that you don't have to know how it works. You can turn up with a paper tape with a whole load of program on it and I'll run it. No intervention by anyone. There's another thing you can do with EDSAC you can't do with your phone, which is walk in it. I'm actually inside EDSAC. I'm inside the CPU. Now the CPU, as we all know, is that little tiny black chip, or in Apple's case with the new M1 Ultra, that massive chip that does all the hard work. So at the heart of your washing machine, when you program it, or your... Here we are, this is EDSAC. And the idea with EDSAC is, it is a CPU. It's room size. It took 2 years to build, from 47 to 49. And on May the 5th, it ran its first program. Now it goes, well done, you built a computer. It's a bit large, isn't it? And they keep it smaller, like pocket size. They laugh at you and kick you out of it. Uninvented. Love to. Now here, said valve is complemented by a memory unit. The coffin. How awesome is that? That is 1 kilobyte of memory. Not necessarily on top, it's the box underneath. And at the back of the machine we have another coffin.
In other words, we have another one of these boxes with another kilobyte. Now this iPad here has got 16 gigabytes of RAM. In other words, 16 billion characters of storage. And this machine behind me from 1949 can have hundreds, if not thousands of iPads in the 2K of storage boxes. So EDSAC is a real start for computing. And it should have been a start for us to have do our paychecks every week. So they would trundle in with lots of punch cards, they'd put them up, they'd load up the program, load up the printers with the pay slips, and they'd say he was with his wife, called the automatic programming engine. And then you had a letter like C, X, whatever, so you've got APEC and Apex and all sorts. So he says, yes, you can have my plans, here's a shopping list, and they give him a load of things in exchange, and they get the plans, and by 1951 December, they have built this, the Hollerith HEC, which stands for Hollerith Electronic Computer 1. And so the Hollerith HEC is effectively, if you want to look at the back of this thing, it's always entertaining. If you've got a bit of OCD, you're going to love this. Yes, check it out. Now that lovely, lovely wiring cradle there, awesome, isn't it? That's why most people looked at computers and went, no, sorry, I haven't got a clue. Because it doesn't really tell you much about it, does it? But then again, if I looked at the brain, it's more like cold porridge, so I couldn't really get my head around how that works. I don't need to though, because I use it every day. So there we have it, the Hollerith HEC, with its amazing electrons, store of value. Originally, in 1947, they get released as a brand new counting device. And the idea is that if you have 0 here, every time I hit 0, this thing goes high, which will effectively tell the next one next to it to increment by 1. So as that thing spins and keeps hitting 0, it keeps clicking the next one round, and that in turn clicks the next one round as it hits 0, and so you can have this as 1s, 10s, 100,000, so on and so forth. Peter Harwell said, well, if we can stop it at a discrete location, we can store stuff in it. So this becomes memory. So this is a base 10 computer. And between 1949 and April 1951, it's being built. And when it's built, it is the 16th computer on the planet. There you go, memory. Now the way you read this memory is that if you were to spin that 10 times, you would find that there is 0 in there because you'd use 10 clock pulses getting back to where you start. But take this one for instance at position 5. If I spin that by pulsing it 10 times, it goes all the way around back to 5. As soon as I hit 0, count the clock pulses, and that tells me the number that's in memory. Awesome. So not only is it destructive in the sense that it destroys the value that's there, it restores it by going around in a full circle. Really good idea. And these ones are the trigger tubes that initiate and stop the synchronization pulse. This is the arithmetic unit, and this bit is where all maths is done. In computing terms, this section at the top here is the arithmetic logic unit. This section here is the accumulator, and this is the shift register. And the more visually aware of you have noticed we have a spare down the bottom. The question is, why would you need a second accumulator and arithmetic logic unit? All computers happen, by the way. And the reason is because if I look at memory, you have a plus minus and then you have 8 decatrons. The 8 decatrons represents a physical number or an instruction, but let's say the number. If I square an 8 to these tins and the relays turned on and off in here will rearrange certain relays in here, which set this machine up to do something, and that's how the operation is read, because these 2 tins just hold 2 numbers. So this is, let's say number 1020 would mean go to position 10 and go to position 20, like that. Or actually 10 is down there and 20 is there. So that's saying, for instance, if this said 5, which is multiply, it would be multiply 10 by 20. And I'm going to now load a program off of the input device. There is one, there's some more, and there's some output. So we have everything needed to run a program. Now, I'm going to get a paper tape here, just quickly show you this. This is a program, okay? That, in its entirety, is 19 instructions. If we were to take, let's say, my latest iPad OS for my iPad, it's about 2 gigabytes. This paper tape would have to be somewhere in the region of 2 times, no, what would it be, 2 gigabytes would be 3,400 miles. It takes 11 years to read 1 gigabyte on this machine, so yeah, it would take a long time to load up the OS, wouldn't it? Lucky we're not doing that. So,
I'm going to now put my paper tape on here. I've loaded the program into the reader. This is akin to like having it on the screen of your iPhone. Now you can press it. When I press it, two things are going to happen. The first is it's going to say start loading. The second is that when it finishes loading, it's put it in memory somewhere. It hasn't a clue. This machine is unaware of the difference between a set of numbers here and a set of numbers here. One could be program code, one could be data, it doesn't really care. It doesn't know. So the idea here is that we need to say on the last instruction where you've got to go. It's like asking someone, here, deliver this mail. Now I want you to go home. Where's that? Oh, never mind. So now the paper tape is going to load. It's going to tell this machine to do several things. First is, clear these values, make them all disappear, only in the areas of memory I need to. So these are all going to go to 0. 0, by the way, is the top north. If a decatron is off, then you'll notice it's got a red line on it, because when they made the decatron, maybe 0 position had twisted inside the mould. So some of them, now we're coming up to the last instruction, that will be the one about now. This one. So that last run of quick fire sequence of clunks, is it saying go here, go to this address 40 and start reading as an instruction. Now the way this computer stores data is it stores numbers as decimal positions around a clock face. We all know how it works. This is 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And if it was to go 3, 2, 1, then it would just wind its way around to the 0. This first decatron in this column of all of them represents a plus and a minus. The only place it's different is down there, those are numbers, that's your plus minus, because that continues in there. And everything else is a decimal position, unless of course we're talking about a program, whereas the first decatron after the symbol is an opcode. In other words, what do you want me to do with address 1 and address 2? And both of those addresses are 2-digit numbers. Now this is an odd system, to say the least. Why would you build a computer when they've already said binary is the best method in decimal? Well, it comes down to two things. Ted Cook Yarborough was told to use nothing extravagant when building this thing he wanted. So he based it all on a mechanical calculator. So they found that you could get decatrons, which are base 10, and this works, and so we can model it off of this, because this is what we need. We need 8 digits of accuracy because they've asked us to build a nuclear reactor in Oxford. And down here is my multiplier, because this is how many times have I done it, and this is my accumulator, this section. Answer gets added repeatedly until it's finished. See them spin. So we have a duplicate of those positions against those. We know them as numbers. This machine just sees a position. They don't care. It's doing 5, 3, 2, and you can read them all through because they're around the clock for us. So now we've squared the number. We need to clear a memory location because it's fine, we've got it in the accumulator, but we can't do anything with it. This is a special location in memory to do the maths. So we fetch the next instruction, decode it, and execute, so that's cleared that. Now we're going to copy the 9 most significant decatrons, jettison the other 7, and put them into this around here. So you'll see that lot clear, and it will go in there. So that's the answer, the 8 most significant digits out of that calculation. Now I don't want to do the same calculation until the condition is met that it is a negative number, and then it says, right, ignore this instruction because it's negative, and that one says stop. So the program is a very simple squares program with reality, and this is how conditional branching works, and this is how a computer works. So because of its visceral and visible nature, it's really a loved bit of kit, which means a lot of TLC because it needs it 79 years old. The marketing literature for these things, because I think it's interesting to look at how people thought. How did the marketeers think that they could catch you to buy it?
So I found it. The marketing brochure for this is absolutely awesome. And today, a loaf of bread, 5p, a pint of beer, 8p. I don't get it. Anyway, then it says, however, the cost of the 803 will give you a very pleasant surprise, which is only £29,000 with 6 months free on-site service. Bargain. Oh, that's brilliant. So this I could fit 8 people in front of this small medium-screen computer is because it's got a console to program it. If you prefer programming it in something that makes a bit more sense, so you get a teleprompter that will allow you to program in higher languages easy rather than programming in hardware. So how do things change? We're in a world where computing is still an unknown. People don't know much about computers. They know the word exists and provide a big track recording capability. So people can tell you when 5 bits address lots, block lots, parity check, awesome. 8 bits, let's use film. So it is adjustable. Another one you should look at on YouTube is a video called Thornton Brothers Eats. Back in the 60s, Thornton Brothers provided 90% of all the eggs and stuff for this country. The Elliott 803 was considered a very successful machine. After over a 5-year period, it sold at 250. Can you imagine Apple after 5 years now? We sold 250 iPhones. We can all go home with bonuses, boys. Now this machine is the Elliott 903. This is a desk size, and what we notice here, or I've got a smaller computer than your small computer. How does this work? So we give it a metaphor like desk size, or wall size, or room size, or whatever. And that's why we say it's a large mobile phone, or a small laptop, or a small tablet. Because it makes life easier when you have a basic thing. Now, this machine here, is just finished. Okay. It's taken all morning since we started this year to get to 500 prime numbers. It's not easy to see methods. You see methods and bars and everything. So what we're going to do here is we're going to value 5,000. I'm just going to leave that money now. That noise, by the way, is the CPU doing things. So in a situation like this, imagine if this slide doesn't exist. It's not running the program. Where's the outcome? Oh, it's going to take a while. How do you know it's doing it? I'm going to calculate prime number range here on my iPad 1, M1. There are 26 disks in here. Each one of these disks will be rotating on its that is enough to throw a 6-ton